Okay, welcome to the next video in the series investing in US residential real estate. In this video we're going to overview two key areas. Firstly, what are the 5 ways of making money in residential real estate? And essentially there's only 5 ways. And secondly, how do we analyze a deal, ensuring that we include all 5 ways of making money in real estate to see what, does it make sense to financially progress with the deal, or should we blow it off? Now, over the next number of weeks, we're going to bring out a number of videos explaining the core concepts touched on here, such that you're going to have a full, detailed, and clear understanding of how this stuff works. Okay, so what are the 5 ways of making money in residential real estate? Firstly, it's leverage. Essentially, that is using other people's money, or to put it another way, most times it's getting some sort of mortgage, be it private or from a bank. Secondly, cash flow, and that's the cash thrown off by a real estate investment after us, taking care of operating costs and financing costs, or indeed mortgage costs. In subsequent videos, we're going to look at how do we calculate this, why is it crucial that we have it, and what are the 3 or 4 serious downsides to us not having it in a potential deal. Third area is capital appreciation. It's the area that we have least control over as an investor, and for many investors it's classed as the icing on the cake, where the cake is a combination of cash flow, debt pay down, tax strategies, and leverage. Now, in subsequent videos we're going to look at the 2 ways to calculate capital appreciation, depending on whether we're buying single family units or multiplexes. We'll look at cap rates and NOI. We'll look at the rule of 72 and the importance of that, and this concept of you make the money on the buy, not on the sell, which leads us into greater fool theory. Fourth area will be debt pay down. That's essentially the tenant paying down the principal of your mortgage. Again, later videos will overview different types of mortgages, from fixed through to variable. Now, bear in mind that currently financing a US property is easier if we do it from Canada rather than from the US. So we'll be focusing some of our time on some Canadian content here, and essentially we'll look at things like amortization versus term, accelerating debt pay down if it's part of one of our strategies, and indeed if the cash flow from the property allows for it. And lastly, we'll look at tax strategies, essentially using tax code to minimize and or delay the amount of tax payable to the government. Again, in later videos we'll look at things like depreciation, capital gains, calculating tax, and the major components that we would look at. Does it make sense to hold a property in your own name, or drop it into a corporation or some sort of corporation stroke LLC hybrid? Okay, so it might be easiest to view these 5 areas as a 500-piece jigsaw, with each area being approximately 100 pieces within that jigsaw, and each of the 5 pieces being a critical element in getting a holistic view of whether a deal makes sense from a financial perspective. Now, keep in mind, if you really get these 5 areas individually and then see how they all pull together from an analysis perspective, you become virtually bulletproof. You'll get to a point of within minutes of looking at a property, being able to cut it up and understand precisely why you would make an offer, and what sort of offer you'd make, or would you just go ahead and kill the deal. And you'll blow the vast majority of your competition away, because most of them will be using buzzwords without really understanding what those buzzwords really mean and how they really work. Okay, so let's look at the second part, which is really analysis. And by analysis we mean the measure of return on our investment in real estate. Essentially, we're going to look at 2 types of analysis. Firstly, quick and dirty, and secondly, hardcore. With both types, we're going to cover briefly the major ratios and areas of analysis, with a view to covering each area in its own separate video in a lot more detail. Okay, first and foremost, quick and dirty. Understand, quick and dirty is exactly that. It's quick and indeed dirty, and it should only ever be used to determine whether something warrants further investigation. It's never used to help you pull the trigger on a deal. Within quick and dirty, essentially we're going to look at like 4 key areas. Firstly, cash on cash. Essentially that's just cash flow before tax divided by our initial investment. In follow-up video we'll look at why this is one of the key ratios that investors look at, and the major and serious limitations associated with using it. Payback period, and all that is how long will it take for us to recover our entire initial investment. It's often referred to as the bingo year, a year beyond which we're into pure profit because we've fully recovered our investment. Third area would be gross rent multiplier. Essentially, if we know what the gross rent multiplier is for the neighborhood that we're looking at, then we can quickly determine, based on the gross rent for the property we're looking at, what would be a fair price range for us to buy the property within. Cash flow zone, pretty much the inverse of gross rent multiplier, or indeed its first cousin. And this ratio will tell us whether a property will cash flow, and all it is essentially just gross rent divided by the purchase price of the property, and we're looking at somewhere between 8 to 10% or better. This ratio can save us a whole lot of time of unnecessary detailed analysis when we use it. Keep in mind that all four ratios really only give you surface knowledge, not the sort of root knowledge that we would require before we'd ever part with our money. And that root knowledge will be got in this second part, which is hardcore. All of them have time value of money challenges, and really look at little more than 100 pieces of that 500-piece jigsaw that we alluded to earlier. And we'll explore each of these in detail and some of their limitations in future videos. Okay, so secondary analysis is what we call hardcore analysis, and from our perspective it is the holy grail of investing, with discounted cash flow being the foundation stone. Now, some of you will be tempted to lose interest at this point because I'm going to introduce some new concepts and terms that may sound a tad foreign and may be a smidgen complicated to a few of you, but I promise you they're not complicated. But don't give up, because I'm going to lay this stuff out for you in subsequent videos such that you totally get this, and when you do, you will totally get investing. Look, we're not merely buying a $100 electronic gizmo here where we don't really need to understand a lot about it, we just go buy it. We're talking about putting often hundreds of thousands of dollars on the line, and for some of us millions, when it comes to building a portfolio. And trust me, what you don't know can really hurt you in this business. Okay, so first area we'll look at is discounted cash flow, and understand that when we buy an investment real estate, as investors, we're not buying bricks and mortar. We're buying income streams that we expect to get on an annual basis, together with a hoped for bumper income stream when and if we dispose of the property. So all that discounted cash flow does is essentially it looks at expected annual income streams and tries to give a value to them in today's terms, in today's money, as it were, using an appropriate discount or interest rate. It's really how much are all of those combined future expected annual income streams worth to us in today's money. Now, this is an extraordinarily powerful piece of analysis to get. It's a little bit like learning to walk when you're a baby. Your world begins to open up. Now, it may sound like gobbledygook, but I promise you, in subsequent videos, we will break this down such that you totally get this. And as I say, once you do, your world will open up from an investing perspective. Okay, so let's move on to a second concept, which is really net present value. And net present value builds from discounted cash flow. So you understand that it's really important getting discounted cash flow, since everything is built from that. And really, with NPV, we're just introducing one further cash flow. It's essentially our initial investment, and something we'll look at in greater detail in a later video. Internal rate of return, that's IRR. It tells us what interest rate or discount rate would cause our initial investment to exactly equal to the sum of all of our expected future discounted cash flows. What was the interest rate that would cause that to happen? and you'll see in time that that's effectively an NPV of 0. That this effectively is telling us what is the interest rate at which our money compounds on an annual basis. And lastly, profitability index. Profitability index allows us to compare properties with different down payments that are throwing off different annual cash flows, and gives us a ratio of dollars returned for dollars invested without being skewed by our initial down payment. It's a really useful ratio, and again, we'll look at that more in another video. Now, okay, I've been told by some of my investors, the unkind ones I have to add, that some of my videos are a little bit like War and Peace, or to put it another way, a tad long. So going forward, and I'm trying to keep this as short as possible, but going forward, future videos will be, ideally 10 minutes or less. Now, I know for some of you, in this area of sound bites, that may sound like an age, but it's real difficult to shrink quality content into a 2-minute soundbite and expect you to fully comprehend it. Okay, so can I say thanks very much indeed for taking the time to view this video. Please keep your eyes open for future videos over the next number of weeks. Look forward to talking with you at that point. Can I say thanks very much indeed, and look forward to speaking with you very soon. Take care. Bye for now.